Pack your bags, old man. I'm serious. I want you out by tomorrow morning.
Liam? It's nearly midnight. What are you talking about?
Don't Liam me. The power dynamic in this house just shifted permanently. $95 million, Thomas. We just hit the jackpot. The ticket is confirmed.
You and Elizabeth won the lottery?
We won. And since I've been mooching under your roof for 8 years, according to you, I'm officially retiring from your hospitality. Actually, I'm taking over. This house, it's mine now. I'll buy it from you just to watch you move out.
You've been in my house for 8 years, Liam. I've fed you. I've kept the lights on while you found yourself.
And now I've found 95 million reasons why I don't have to listen to your lectures anymore. Elizabeth is already packing your stuff in the guest room.
Elizabeth is helping you? My own daughter?
She's tired of your old school rules, Tom. We're rich, we're moving to the coast, but I wanted the satisfaction of kicking you out of your own front door first.
I see. So the money changed everything that quickly?
It didn't change anything. It just gave me the power to show you how much I've hated every second of your charity. Get your coat. I've called an Uber. It'll be there in 10 minutes.
Liam, before you do something you'll regret for the rest of your life, I have one question.
Oh, here we go. The wisdom speech. Save it.
No speech. Just a question about the ticket.
What about it? It's sitting right here on the kitchen table. It's beautiful.
Did you check the name on the back of the subscription?
What are you talking about? I bought the ticket at the gas station down the street.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. I used the 20 bucks you left on the counter for the grocery run.
Exactly.
What does that matter? I bought it. My hand, my transaction.
Liam, that wasn't a $20 bill. That was a voucher from my lottery club subscription. I've been a member of the state legacy pool for 15 years.
So, I went to the store. I picked the numbers.
You didn't pick the numbers, Liam. The voucher is linked to a pre-registered account. Those numbers are my late wife's birthday and our anniversary. They are hard-coded into the club membership.
You're lying. You're just trying to scare me so I don't kick you out.
Go look at the back of the ticket. Under the signature line, there's a digital watermark, Onbir, Elikipiem.
Wait. It says Property of Trust Batch 402. What is that?
That's my private family trust. The one that paid for your car, the one that paid for Elizabeth's medical school, and the one that legally owns every single ticket generated by that membership voucher.
No. That's not how it works. I held the paper. I bought it.
In this state, the purchaser of a ticket using a corporate or trust voucher is considered a proxy agent. You didn't win $95 million, Liam. You just ran an errand for me.
Elizabeth! Tom, stop this. This isn't funny.
I'm not laughing. You just told me you've hated my charity for 8 years. You told me my daughter is currently throwing my late wife's belongings into boxes.
We were just excited. We didn't mean it like that. Tom, listen, we can talk about this.
Oh, now we can talk? 10 minutes ago, I was being Ubered to a motel.
I was joking. It was the adrenaline. Look, Elizabeth is crying now. You're upsetting her.
She's crying because she realizes she just traded her father for a mountain of money that doesn't belong to her.
It's our money. We are family.
Pack your bags, old man. Those were your words, right?
I'll take it back. I'm sorry.
Too late. I just called my attorney, Victor. He's the trustee. I've instructed him to freeze the claim process and file a conversion suit if you even attempt to sign that ticket.
You would sue your own son-in-law?
I'm not suing my son-in-law. I'm protecting my trust from a thief.
Tom, please. We have nothing else. If you take this, we're broke. I quit my job tonight. I literally sent the I quit email an hour ago.
That was a bold move for someone who doesn't own the ticket.
Please, don't do this. I'll do anything.
Here is what is going to happen. You are going to put that ticket back on the counter. You are going to unpack every single one of my things. And then you are going to leave.
What about Elizabeth?
She can stay if she remembers how to be a daughter. But you're the one who wanted to see someone get kicked out tonight.
Tom, it's raining. I have nowhere to go.
I'll call you an Uber. It'll be there in 10 minutes.
You can't be serious.
I've never been more serious in my life. Check the front porch. The car is already turning into the driveway.
Tom, answer me. Please.
That was quite an unpleasant conversation, wasn't it? But I want you to know my story, so that everyone can share their perspective on this. It took 8 long years of mooching under my roof before my daughter and her husband finally hit the jackpot $95 million. The very same night, my son-in-law stared me down and barked, Pack your bags, old man. This place belongs to me now. I didn't get angry. I just grinned. I hit him with a single question, and the blood drained from his face faster than a sinkhole collapsing. I was about to strip him of every dime, not out of malice, but because his avarice blinded him to the cliff edge he was already stepping off. Welcome to the channel. Before we dive into the madness, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know which state or country you're tuning in from. Just a heads up, this narrative is a work of fiction, dramatized to deliver a punchy experience and some hard-earned wisdom. While names and scenarios might seem familiar, any likeness to real life is accidental. The moral, however, is very real. After nearly a decade of freeloading, Christopher ordered me to vacate my own home. I smirked. The fool had no clue about the other winning ticket. Let me introduce myself. I'm Thomas Miller, 72 years young, with a 38-year career behind me designing highways for the Oregon DOT. My life's work was building bridges. Sure, I spanned plenty of rivers, but the real job was connecting folks to their livelihoods and loved ones. Being an engineer wires your brain to focus on one thing: foundations. You learn to calculate load-bearing limits, stress points, and how to build something that lasts centuries, not just seasons. I wish I'd used that same structural logic on my personal affairs. I reside, or rather, used to reside comfortably at 2847 Ponderosa Lane, right here in Bend, Oregon. For those of you who know the Pacific Northwest, you know Bend is nestled right at the base of the Cascades, wrapped in endless pines and crisp high desert air that feels sharp and pure when you breathe it in. My street, Ponderosa Lane, skirts the southern perimeter of the city. It's one of those silent neighborhoods with sprawling lawns and folks who actually wave back. At night, the only sound is the wind whispering through the timber. Back in 1988, my late wife Margaret and I constructed that place from scratch. I'm not talking about hiring contractors. I mean, we swung the hammers ourselves. I handled the framing and the slab work, pouring every yard of concrete with an old pal from the construction trade. Margaret selected every fixture, from the backsplash tiles to the cabinet hardware. She was the one who dug the garden beds and lined the driveway with birch saplings. Decades later, those trees stand tall and rigid, their pale bark shining like ghosts under the moon. She always called them the home skeleton, the hidden strength supporting all the beauty. We shared 41 years before I lost her in the spring of 2016. Pancreatic cancer took her, and it was brutal blink, and you miss it. It started with a simple backache, and 6 weeks later, I was planning a funeral. The memory of the oncologist telling us they were out of options is burned into my brain. Margaret just gripped my hand tight and whispered, "Okay, Teddy, let's make these last days count." That was her to a T, resilient, pragmatic, and gentle. Once the house was empty of her, it felt cavernous and deafeningly silent. I left her slippers right where she kept them and slept on my side of the mattress. I'd passed the kitchen praying for the scent of her morning brew, but got nothing but dead air. People love to say time heals all wounds. It doesn't. The pain just changes shape. By the autumn of 2016, my daughter Claire reached out. She was 30 then, hitched to a guy named Christopher Blake. They were college sweethearts who had been legally wed for roughly 2 years. Claire used to be my shadow, sitting on my knee while I drafted blueprints, bombarding me with endless curiosity about how things worked. She was brilliant and vibrant, but marriage to Christopher dimmed her spark. The calls stopped coming, and the visits dried up. On the rare occasions she did drop by, Christopher always invented an excuse to drag her away early. That November, she confessed that Christopher got canned from his sales gig. They were drowning in Portland rent, and I could hear the terror and fatigue in her voice. I reacted like any dad would. I offered them a lifeline, told them to move into the big house until they stabilized. "It'll only be a couple of months, Dad," Claire promised. Just until Christopher lands a new position. I took her word for it. They unpacked their boxes right before Thanksgiving, and honestly, having life inside those walls again felt nice initially. Claire took over the cooking, and Christopher actually made himself useful, swapping out some decayed decking out back. We'd gather for meals, chatting about the usual fluff weather, football, Christmas logistics. It felt like a real home again. But then the calendar kept flipping. 1 year passed. Christopher remained unemployed. I suspect he quit trying altogether. It was hard to know for sure. He just vegetated on the sofa, glued to his screen, or took secretive calls in the bedroom. Meanwhile, Claire was grinding herself to dust, working double shifts at a local clinic. She'd walk in looking like a zombie, too drained to speak. Gradually, imperceptibly at first, the atmosphere shifted. I started feeling like a guest in my own home. Christopher started with the snide remarks. "You know, Ted, this kitchen is a relic. These cabinets scream 1980s. Hey, or we could totally gut your workshop. Turn it into a proper guest suite if we cleared out all the junk." I mistook it for kindness at first. Then I realized he wasn't helping. He was sizing the place up, measuring square footage, counting my assets. Year 2 bled into year 3, then 4, then 5. I kept telling myself they'd move on once they scraped together a nest egg. Christopher claimed he had a solid lead on a job once, but it evaporated. Pretty soon, I was the one who felt like a stranger in my own hallway. Christopher started shifting the furniture without a word. He'd packed the living room with his buddies while I hid away in my bedroom. Claire wouldn't even look me in the eye. Whenever I tried to corner her for a private chat, Christopher would materialize in the doorway, listening. That nightmare started 8 years ago. I should have clocked it sooner. I should have seen how he was methodically poisoning my daughter against me. He got comfortable in a house he didn't build, hijacking a life he never earned. But I swallowed it because I loved my daughter. I kept hoping the tide would turn. Then, 3 months ago, I picked up 2 lottery tickets at the quick stop off Highway 97. Just a couple of Powerball slips, $2 a pop. I handed one to Claire, a peace offering. I tucked the other in my wallet. 3 days later, the numbers hit. $95 million. That's when Christopher decided my expiration date had arrived. But the man made a fatal miscalculation. See, buying those tickets wasn't just a gamble. It was a test. Let me show you how this trap was set. How 8 years ago, I unlocked my door for Christopher and Claire. But to understand that, we need to go back further. Back to the spring of 2016. The season, I lost Margaret. She was only 60. We had the whole summer mapped out a getaway to the coast. We were going to take a slow cruise down Highway 101, stopping in every dusty town for clam chowder and a view of the tide rolling in. Margaret worshipped the ocean. She always said the vastness of the water made our problems look small. We never saw that coastline. The cancer was aggressive. By the time the doctors identified it, the only option left was to keep her comfortable. I practically lived in her hospital room, clutching her hand, babbling about everything and nothing. She retold stories I'd memorized decades ago, like the afternoon we closed on the Ponderosa Lane property, or the night Claire arrived 3 weeks premature, and I almost ditched the car speeding to the maternity ward. She laughed about it. Even in that sterile room, she found a way to laugh. At the end, she gripped my fingers and whispered, "Tom, don't become one of those ghosts who forgets to live. Promise me." I gave her my word. 3 days later, we buried her at First Community Church. Claire drove down from Portland. She stood right next to me at the grave, holding on to me for dear life. She wept silently into my shoulder. For a heartbeat, I felt a connection like I hadn't been left entirely on my own. Then she headed back to the city, and I returned to the hollow echo of the house on Ponderosa Lane. The silence was deafening. That fall, in November of 2016, the phone rang. I heard the panic in her voice before she even spoke. "Dad, Christopher lost his job. We're drowning in bills. I don't know where to turn." I didn't blink. "Come home, honey. Stay here until you get back on your feet. Are you sure?" "Absolutely." 2 weeks later, a U-Haul backed into the driveway carrying their whole life. I helped Christopher haul crates into the guest room. Claire squeezed me tight on the porch and whispered, "Thank you, Dad." Just for a little while, I was naive enough to believe her. For the first year or so, it was actually decent. Christopher pitched in with repairs, fixing a leaky faucet, swapping out old weather, stripping on the windows. Claire took over Sunday dinner, whipping up pot roast and mashed potatoes that tasted just like Margaret's. We'd sit around the table, chatting about the rain, Claire's gig at the medical center, or Christopher's hunt for work. It felt stable, like a family again. But around the 3-year mark, the atmosphere curdled. It started with subtleties. Christopher began shifting furniture around without asking. One afternoon, I got back from the hardware store to find Margaret's favorite reading chair dragged out to the garage. When I confronted him, Christopher just shrugged. It messed with the flow, Tom. We needed the square footage for the new TV stand. Then he started erasing traces of Margaret. Her portraits on the mantel vanished, replaced by generic department store art. Her gardening tools went missing from the shed. When I asked Claire, she couldn't even look at me. Christopher thinks it's healthier this way, Dad. You know, to move on. Move on? I bit my tongue. I just rescued one of Margaret's photos and hid it on my nightstand, out of his reach. By year 4 and 5, the hostile takeover was undeniable. Christopher didn't ask for my opinion anymore. He'd invite random people over, buddies I'd never met, and I'd retreat to my room just to get some peace. Christopher stopped calling it Dad's place. Suddenly, it was our home, spoken with the arrogance of a man who'd laid the bricks himself and poured the foundation with his own bare hands. Then came the silence. Claire wouldn't even look at me after meals. She'd retreat to their bedroom, the door clicking shut, leaving me with nothing but the murmur of their hushed conspiracies. I tried to breach the wall. I'd corner her by the coffee pot at dawn, forcing a smile. Honey, talk to me. Is everything okay? Her smile was plastic, dead in the eyes. Everything's perfect, Dad. But the air in the room screamed otherwise. The years bled together: 2021, 22, 23. By early 2024, I was a ghost haunting my own hallways. Christopher wouldn't even acknowledge my existence when he passed me. He took over everything, hiring contractors, tearing up the landscaping, repainting the walls without asking. I was the last to know, usually after the check cleared. If I pushed back, he'd give me that heavy sigh, like I was a senile burden he had to manage. Tom, we're just trying to help. You're not exactly in your prime anymore. That's when I started retreating to my bedroom for good. I ate solo trays in the dark, listening to their muffled laughter downstairs, feeling the walls of the house I paid for slowly shrinking around my neck like a noose. My only sanity check was Bernard Smith, the guy next door. Bernard is 74, a retired mail carrier with a desert-dry wit and a skull thicker than concrete. We go back 30 years, right to the day he and his wife, Maureen, unpacked 3 doors down. He kept showing up on my porch weekly, always with a flimsy pretext, borrowing a wrench, complaining about the humidity, offering stale coffee. I wasn't fooled. He was doing a wellness check on the old man. Early April 2024, a Tuesday. I wandered over to his place and found him wrestling a lawnmower in the garage. He looked up, grinning like a jackal. Well, look who it is. Thomas Miller. Haven't seen your face in 2 weeks. I assumed you turned into a vampire. I forced a grimace. Just busy. Busy rotting in that bedroom, you mean? I didn't have the energy to deny it. Bernard wiped the grease off his hands with a rag and dropped the act. You know you don't have to live like a prisoner, right? I don't follow. The hell you don't. We stood there in the dust motes, letting the silence hang heavy between us. He dug into his jeans, pulled out 2 wrinkled dollar bills, and waved them in my face. Here's the plan. I'm hitting the quick stop for the Powerball. You're coming. You're buying a ticket. Maybe you hit the jackpot and buy your freedom. I actually laughed, a rusty sound I hadn't made in a month. Bernard, I've never gambled a dime in my life. Then you're overdue. So I grabbed my coat, and on that Tuesday morning, the first week of April 2024, I crossed a line I'd never crossed. I bought a lottery ticket, not for the cash. I did it because Bernard pushed me, and because for one split second, I wanted to believe miracles still happened. Those slips of paper cost me $4, $2 apiece. It was actually a Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. I had drifted over to the Smith's place that afternoon, sticking to our routine. Bernard and I were locked in our eternal chess war. Maureen had the coffee brewing, sitting nearby. She was buried in a paperback, occasionally looking up to roast Bernard's abysmal strategy. "You're getting predictable, old man," Bernard grunted, sliding a knight forward. "Seen that move 3 times this month, and you still can't stop it." I shot back. Maureen peered over her glasses. 71, silver-haired and sharp as a tack. She had a laugh that could warm a blizzard. 30 years. You two have been playing this same game," she teased. "I don't know how you don't bore each other to death." We just kept playing in the quiet comfort of the kitchen. Bernard leaned back, the chair creaking. "You see the Powerball hit 95 million? I stayed focused on the board. "I don't gamble, Bernard." "I know. But maybe you need a little thrill." I slid my bishop diagonally. Checkmate in 3. Bernard let out a groan. "Damn it, Tom." Maureen snapped her book shut. "Bernard, stop pestering him about the lottery." "It's $2. Bernard cut in. $2 for a glimmer of hope. "Live a little, Tom. I'm going to the quick stop. Come on. I dare you." I looked at him. He had that stubborn glint, the look that said he wasn't backing down. After 8 years of feeling like a piece of furniture in my own home, maybe I was desperate for a distraction, even if it was just a piece of paper. "Fine," I sighed. "I'm in." Bernard grinned. "That's the spirit." An hour later, we were rattling down Highway 97 in Bernard's beat-up pickup, pulling into the quick stop. It was a dive peeling paint, flickering neon sign buzzing, "Open 24 hours." Dave Wilson was manning the register. Dave was 55, clinging to the last of his hair, rocking a mustache from the 80s and a flannel shirt that looked like it hadn't been washed since the Reagan administration. He didn't even lift his head until the door chime faded, then shot us a look that screamed, "Trouble." Me and Bernard Smith walking in at high noon? Yeah, that usually meant the apocalypse was starting early. "Prepare to retire early, Dave," Bernard announced, slapping a crisp $2 bill on the glass. "One ticket to the good life. Powerball." Dave punched the keys without a word and slid the slip across. Bernard elbowed me. "You're up, Theo." I froze. 72 years on this earth, and I'd never gambled a dime. Standing next to the beef jerky, I felt like a complete fool, but the pressure was on. So I dug out my wallet and tossed my debit card down. "Actually, make it 2, Dave." The clerk blinked, processing. "2?" He shrugged, printed the slips, swiped my card, and handed over the paper trail. I tucked the receipt away like it was a state secret, then stared at the thermal paper in my palm. Just a random sequence of black ink digits. Completely hollow. I jammed them into my jeans and trailed Bernard to his pickup. "2 tickets?" He laughed, firing up the engine. "Look at you. Living on the edge. Big spender." "Lay off," I grumbled. Back at the house, the silence was heavy. Christopher was sprawled on the couch, face glowing blue from his laptop screen. Claire was at the stove, which was a shock. We usually lived on takeout or whatever she grabbed on the way to her bedroom. But tonight, she was actually stirring a pot. For a split second, the silhouette looked like Margaret. I could almost hear her humming in that same spot. "Hey, Dad," she mumbled, eyes fixed on the sauce. "Food's up in 5. I fingered the lottery slips in my pocket. A sudden urge hit me. I walked over and held one out. "Hey, took a gamble today. Bought a couple of lottery tickets. I know, it's stupid, but take one." She turned, looking genuinely caught off guard. She dried her hands and took the paper. The smile that crossed her face was small, but it was the first real one I'd seen in ages. "Thanks, Dad. Hey, maybe this is our big break." "Maybe," I replied. Then Christopher darkened the doorway, arms folded tight. He eyed the paper in her hand and let out a derisive snort. "Wait, you actually bought into the idiot tax? Really, Tom? Trying to buy some respect?" He strode over, snatched the ticket from her, and held it up like he was inspecting a diamond for flaws. "Powerball's at 95 million. Yeah, don't hold your breath." Claire stayed silent, turning back to her pot. I retreated to my room, took the second ticket, and slid it into the nightstand drawer, right beside Margaret's old reading glasses. And that was it. Out of sight, out of mind. 3 days later, Saturday, April 6th, I was in the shed, smoothing out a cedar block. The sawdust and the work, it was the only thing keeping me grounded. I was lost in the grain pattern when a shriek tore through the air from the main house. It wasn't terror. It was pure, hysterical adrenaline. I dropped the wood and bolted for the back door. I burst in to find Claire frozen in the kitchen, phone in one hand, ticket in the other, shaking like a leaf. "We got it," she wheezed. $95 million. Christopher materialized behind her, moving with predatory speed. He ripped the ticket away and hammered on the laptop keys, bringing up the results. His eyes darted between the screen and the paper. Once, twice. "Holy hell," he gasped. "It's real." I leaned against the doorframe. Just a spectator. Claire was hyperventilating. Christopher was already pacing, phone to his ear, making moves. "Yeah, lottery claims department. Urgent. We're talking 95 million. Neither of them even glanced my way. I watched them for a long minute. There was no excitement in my gut, just a cold, hollow pit. Because right then, the truth I'd been ignoring hit me hard. To them, I wasn't family. I was just a ghost haunting the hallways. I went back to the shed and stayed there until the sun died. When I finally dragged myself inside, Christopher was sitting at the table like a judge awaiting the accused. The vibe had shifted. That mask of polite irritation was gone. In its place was something cold and sharp. Claire was at the sink, refusing to look at me. "Something wrong?" I asked. Christopher didn't get up. "We need to have a conversation. Things are different now." I hovered by the door. "Meaning?" "Claire and I just came into $95 million. And frankly, this house? It doesn't fit the new trajectory." The sentence hung there, heavy and toxic. "Your trajectory," I repeated softly. "Is that so?" Christopher leaned back, kicking his feet up like he owned the place. "Dad, let's be real. We think you'd be better off in assisted living, somewhere with round-the-clock nurses. We'll handle the bills. All you have to do is sign over the deed. Just give us the house." I shot a glance at Claire. "Honey, are you hearing this?" She stared at the floorboards, refusing to say a word. Christopher stood up and marched to the kitchen island. "Let me be crystal clear, Tom. We're done playing the charity game. We don't need you. This place is a money pit, rotted plumbing, ancient wiring. We could sell it, bulldoze it. Doesn't matter. It belongs to us now." "It's mine," I wheezed. Christopher flashed a smile that was all teeth and zero warmth. "Actually, you might want to rethink that. You make this hard, we get litigious. Competency hearings. Guardianship proceedings. You're 72, Tom. You live alone. You can barely feed yourself. A halfway decent lawyer could paint you as senile in 5 minutes." My hands trembled against my thighs. "That's a lie." "Is it? Look at the clock. How many good years do you have left? 5? 10? You really want to spend them fighting us in court? Because we will fight, and we will win." I turned to my daughter-in-law again. "Claire, look at me." She turned, and for a split second, I saw a crack in the armor gilt, maybe pain. Then Christopher clamped a hand on her shoulder, and the wall went back up. "We're offering you a golden parachute," Christopher sneered. "A clean break. We set you up, cover your expenses. Just play ball. Refuse. And we do this the ugly way. I've already started building a file on you. The missed bills, the confusion, the isolation, the depression. It's all in there. A judge will see a man crying out for help, and we'll be the heroes stepping in to provide it." My chest felt like it was in a vice. Air wouldn't fill my lungs. Christopher straightened his collar. "Sleep on it. We finalize this tomorrow. Let's go, Claire." He strode toward the hallway. Claire trailed him like a beaten dog, head down, hands wringing together. She didn't look back. Then the door slammed, and I was left standing in the kitchen Margaret and I built, feeling like a ghost in my own life. I had to get out. I escaped out the back door to my workshop. The smell of sawdust and varnish hit me my sanctuary. The tools on the pegboard stared back at me. The half-finished cedar chest sat on the workbench. I flicked on the overhead light and stood there, crushed under the weight of Christopher's threats. "We don't need you. You're incompetent. How many years do you really have left? I slumped onto the old shop stool and buried my face in my hands. I felt microscopic, powerless, terrified. I hid there until the sun went down. Eventually, I dragged myself back inside, past the kitchen where Christopher and Claire's muffled arguments leaked from the guest room, and into my own bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, not my side, but Margaret's. It was an old reflex. Whenever I needed clarity, I'd sit there, pretending I could still feel her warmth beside me. I stared at the silver-framed photo on the dresser-us on our wedding day. Young, invincible, full of hope. I felt light years away from that man. Christopher was right. I was 72, isolated, and out of ammunition. Then my gaze drifted to the nightstand drawer. I hesitated, then slid it open. Inside lay the small manila envelope where I kept the essentials. Margaret's reading glasses, old love letters, a stash of emergency cash. And buried at the bottom, folded in half, was a slip of thermal paper, the lottery ticket. My hands shook as I fished it out. The numbers were printed in stark black ink. I grabbed my smartphone and pulled up the Powerball results. The winning numbers filled the screen. I checked them against the ticket. Match, match, match. Every single one. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I yanked my wallet from my jacket. The receipt was still tucked inside, proof I'd purchased both tickets in one transaction. I was the owner. Both of them. Christopher was flying blind. He thought the jackpot ticket was the one he'd swiped from Claire's purse. But he was dead wrong. I leaned back on Margaret's floral pillows, staring at the slip of paper. For the first time in 8 years, the resignation vanished. It was replaced by anger. And underneath that, something stronger. Hope. I thought about Margaret, how she'd squeeze my shoulder when I was spiraling and say, "Tom, trust the foundation. If it's solid, the house will hold." This was my foundation. This house. This life. The work I'd done. I wasn't letting Christopher take a damn thing. I slept with that ticket tucked under my pillow. When Sunday morning broke, April 7th, I grabbed the phone and dialed Bernard. "Bernard," I said when he answered. "I need you." His voice was gravelly with sleep. "What's wrong?" "I need your legal help," I said, my voice steady as a rock. "Christopher is trying to steal my home. He's threatening competency hearings. But listen to me, Bernie. I've got the ace up my sleeve. The other lottery ticket. I bought 2 tickets, and I've still got one left." Silence hung on the line. Then Bernard's voice cut through. "I'm coming over. Right now." "No," I snapped. "Don't. Christopher and Claire are here. If you show up, it blows everything." "Then come to my place," he insisted. 5 minutes. The line went dead. I scrambled to grab the winning ticket, the crumpled receipt, my wallet, and my keys. I ghosted out the back door, keeping my head down as I hustled 3 doors down to Bernard's house. He was already waiting on the front porch, wrapped in his bathrobe like a sentry. "You look like hell, Theo," he muttered as I approached. "Yeah, well, I feel like it too." He gripped my shoulder, steering me inside. Maureen was already in the kitchen, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. She spun around the second she saw me, her expression softening into pure concern. "Tom, honey, my God, what happened?" I collapsed into a chair at their kitchen table, the same spot where Bernard and I had battled over a chessboard just 4 days earlier, and spilled the whole ugly truth. I told them about the jackpot, Christopher's blackmail, and his plan to shove me into an assisted living facility. I explained the threats of competency hearings and revealed the existence of the second ticket. By the time I stopped talking, Maureen's face was beet red with rage. "That snake," she hissed. "That absolute snake." I went on to describe how Claire had just stood there, completely silent, while her husband threatened to dismantle my life. Bernard leaned back, arms crossed over his chest, his jaw set like granite. "You need a lawyer, Theo. A shark." I shook my head. "I don't know any lawyers." "Well, I do," Maureen interjected. She whipped out her phone and started swiping through her contacts. "Rachel Kemp. She's Bernard's great-niece. Remember her? She came to our 4th of July barbecue a few years back. Sharp as a tack. She handles property and family law up in Portland. Bernard nodded in agreement. Rachel's tough as nails. If anyone can fix this mess, it's her. Maureen hit dial. It rang 4 times before a crisp female voice picked up. Aunt Maureen? It's pretty early. Is everything okay? Rachel, honey, I am so sorry to bother you on a Sunday, but we've got a real emergency. It involves our neighbor, Thomas Miller. He's in serious trouble. Can you see him today? A brief silence followed. Then Rachel said, "Talk to me. What's going on?" Maureen shoved the phone into my hand. I ran through the facts again, fast but precise, just like I was presenting a bridge schematic to the state board. When I finished, the line went quiet. "Mr. Marsh," she started, her voice all business. "Do you have the original receipt proving you bought both tickets in a single transaction?" "Yes." "And the second winning ticket is currently in your possession?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then you've got a case. Can you get to Portland by 11 a.m.? Meet me at my office." "I'll be there." She rattled off an address and clicked off. I handed the mobile back to Maureen. "She'll help you," Maureen said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "You're going to be okay." Bernard stood up abruptly. "I'm riding shotgun," he announced. "No," I said firmly. "Thanks, Bernard, but this is something I have to handle on my own." He studied my face for a long beat, then gave a slow nod. "All right. But you call me the second you walk out of there. Understood?" "I will." I slipped out of their house and crept back toward mine. Christopher's sedan was still parked in the driveway, the windows dark and ominous. I hopped into my truck, cranked the engine, and peeled out, heading west toward Portland. The drive was a solid 3-hour haul. I took Highway 97 south to Bend, then cut west onto Route 20, climbing straight into the Cascade Mountains. The road snaked through thick pine forests and high desert scrub, framed by snow-capped peaks and endless sky. I had driven this stretch 100 times back when I worked for the Department of Transportation. I knew every blind curve, every steep grade, and exactly where the black ice liked to hide in the winter. My mind drifted to Margaret, thinking about the day we drove this exact road to pick out backsplash tile for the kitchen. She had fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the cool glass. I remembered driving in silence, just listening to the rhythm of her breathing. Then my thoughts shifted to Claire. I thought about the little girl who used to sit on my lap while I sketched out bridge schematics. I remembered how she'd giggle when I let her hold the end of the tape measure, beaming like she had the most important job on earth. Then I thought about Christopher. I thought about the way he looked at me last night, cold, calculating, like I was just a structural flaw that needed to be engineered out of existence. And I thought about what I had spent my entire life doing, building things designed to withstand immense pressure. Bridges, highways, foundations. Everything I ever built relied on one thing: a solid base. If the foundation held, the structure survived. That house was my foundation. This life was my build. And I wasn't about to let some greedy amateur demo it. I hit the Portland city limits just before 11. Rachel's office was in a vintage brick building downtown, right near the river. I found a spot on the street and took the elevator up to the 3rd floor. Rachel was already waiting in the lobby. She was about 42, tall and sharp-eyed, with dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She shook my hand with a grip that meant business. "Mr. Marsh, come on back." Her office was compact but strictly professional walls lined with heavy law books and framed diplomas. She pointed to a chair and sat opposite me, a fresh legal pad ready on her desk. "Tell me everything," she commanded. So I did. I laid it all out: the lottery tickets, the receipt, Christopher's extortion attempts, the threats of competency hearings, and the assisted living facility they were trying to bury me in. I laid the crumpled ticket and the fading thermal receipt on the mahogany desk. Rachel didn't just look at them. She scrutinized them like a jeweler inspecting a diamond, snapping high-res photos and scribbling furiously on her legal pad. Finally, she capped her pen, leaned back in her leather chair, and locked eyes with me. "Okay, Tom, here is the bottom line. In the state of Oregon, possession is 9/10 of the law, but the paper trail is the other 10th. Unless there is a document explicitly signing over rights, The purchaser is the owner. You ran a single debit transaction for 2 slips. That receipt is your golden ticket. You handed a slip to your daughter as a gift. Sure. But without a written contract or a clear sale, there is no transfer of title. The jackpot your son-in-law is foaming at the mouth for, legally, it is still in your wallet. The knot in my chest that had been tightening for 24 hours finally loosened. So, I'm not crazy. I can fight this. You can win this. But speed is everything. We are filing an emergency notice of dispute with the Oregon Lottery Commission immediately. I mean right this second. Today. If we hesitate, and Christopher walks into that office to claim the check, unringing that bell becomes a nightmare. We strike first. She cracked her laptop open, and her fingers flew across the keyboard. We spent the next 2 hours in a blur of legalese, finalizing the affidavit and locking down the proof. At exactly 2:47 p.m., Rachel pressed the enter key to submit the digital filing. Filed, she stated flatly. The commission is on notice. That ticket is radioactive now. Christopher can't touch a dime without a formal hearing. I just sat there, blinking. It was actually happening. She snapped her laptop shut and her expression darkened. Listen to me closely, Mr. Marsh. When the realization hits them, it is going to be volatile. Is your home secure? I need you to be vigilant. If he escalates, if he even raises his voice, you dial 911. Then you call me. We clear? Crystal. I shook her hand, a firm grip, and walked out into the cool air. The commute back to Bend felt surreal. Same jagged peaks on the horizon, same asphalt. But the man behind the wheel had changed. The victim was gone. I felt dangerous. I hit the city limits just past 7 o'clock. The sunset was bleeding purple and fire orange across the high desert sky. Turning onto Ponderosa Lane, my stomach tightened. Every light in the house was blazing. And there it was, Christopher's truck parked crooked in the driveway. I killed the engine and marched up the walk. I didn't even get my key in the lock before the door flew open. Christopher stood there, cell phone gripped like a weapon, face blotchy and sweating. What did you do? He snarled. I had seen him mad before, but this was new. Last night was calculation. This was desperation. This was the panic of a guy who had already mentally spent millions he didn't have. His shouting vibrated through the frame before I crossed the threshold. Our attorney just got the flag. You want to tell me what the hell you are playing at? He loomed in the foyer, blocking my entry, thumb white against his phone screen. His jaw muscles were jumping. A blue vein throbbed in his temple. I calmly dropped my keys on the side table and met his stare without blinking. I don't answer to you. You filed a fraud claim, Christopher screamed, his pitch climbing. You are trying to rob us. I am not robbing anyone, I said, keeping my voice dead level. I purchased 2 tickets. I hold the receipt. You gave one to Claire. Gifts aren't takebacks, old man. I gave my daughter a losing ticket. The winner? That stayed with me. Christopher took an aggressive step forward. You think a court buys that garbage? That you just magically held onto the jackpot slip for yourself? I brushed past him, heading for the den. My knees were locked, my hands steady as stone. I sank into Margaret's vintage recliner, the one Christopher had banished to the garage for 3 years. I had dragged it back inside last month while they were out. Now, I settled into the velvet, reclaiming my throne. Christopher stormed in, towering over me, biceps flexed. It was the stance of a bully who had never been told no. Listen to me, Tom, he spat. You are going to call and retract that dispute right now. Because if you don't, I will burn your world down. I looked him dead in the eye. Is that a threat? It is a promise. We have war chest money now. We can bury you in litigation. Motions, delays, hearings. You are 72. Do you honestly think you have enough years left to see a payout? I stayed silent. Christopher bent at the waist, slamming his hands onto the armrests, trapping me, his breath hot on my face. I have been keeping a diary, Tom. Concerned notes. All those little slip-ups. The time the oven stayed on. The missed utility payments. The way you mutter to yourself in the garden. My heart skipped a beat. I never left the oven on. A cruel smirk curled his lip. Didn't you? My logbook says you did. Dates, times, incidents. You are lying. Am I? Or is your brain just turning to mush like every other senile geriatric? He stood up tall, sliding his hands into his pockets with a swagger. We can petition for incompetence, Tom. Prove you need a legal guardian to manage your affairs. And once I have power of attorney, this lawsuit vanishes. A floorboard creaked behind him. Claire stood in the archway, hugging her ribs, looking like a ghost. "Christopher, please," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't do this." He didn't even look at her. He just snapped, cutting her dead. Claire recoiled like he'd slapped her, but she didn't run. She just stood there, paralyzed, her eyes darting between him and me like a trapped animal. I forced myself up. My bad knees screamed in protest, but I locked them straight. I wasn't going to show weakness. Not now. I stared him down. "We're done here." That's when he smiled, a cold, predatory grin that stretched too wide. "You're finished, Tom," he sneered. "The money, your little girl, your pride. I'm taking it all." I turned my back on him. I froze right next to Claire. I looked at her, and for a split second, the 40-year-old woman vanished. I saw the toddler she used to be. I saw the scared kid who squeezed my hand at Margaret's burial. But that kid was gone. I kept moving. "You can't beat me, old man!" His voice chased me down the hall. I gripped the doorframe, stopping just before I crossed the line. I looked back one last time. My self-respect belongs to me, Christopher. That's the one thing you can't steal. I retreated into my room and shut the world out. I slumped onto the mattress, straining to hear through the wood. Muffled whispers turned into shouting. The volume spiked. Claire tried to argue, her voice pleading, but Christopher sliced through her words with a razor-sharp rebuke. Then came the sound of sobbing. "This is on him!" Christopher roared, projecting so I'd hear it. "He's the one destroying this family, not us." I squeezed my eyes shut, blocking out the lies. At 9 o'clock, my pocket vibrated. A text from Rachel. "You holding up?" I typed back a single word. "Yes." "He threatened me," I added. "Competency hearings. Guardianship. He's going for the jugular." Her reply was instant. "Paper trail. Now." Dates, times, quotes. I dug through my desk until I found a dusty composition book from an old work project and clicked my pen. Sunday, April 7th, 2024. 7:15 in the evening. Christopher ambushed me in the den. Claims he's keeping a log of concerning incidents. Said I left the gas range on. A lie. Said I missed bill payments. Another lie. Threatened to have me declared mentally unfit. Threatened to seize legal guardianship. Bragged they could tie up the lawsuit for a decade until I'm dead. Claire witnessed it all and stayed silent. I spent 20 minutes furiously scribbling, getting every detail down. I captured his phrasing, the way he puffed his chest out, every fabrication he spat at me. I wrote down every threat. When the ink stopped flowing, I stared at the paper, and a cold, hard truth washed over me. This wasn't a reaction to the lottery jackpot. Christopher didn't just start taking notes yesterday. He's been plotting this coup for months, maybe years. The witnesses he mentioned, the incidents, all smoke and mirrors. But the fact that he had the weaponized vocabulary ready meant he'd been rehearsing. He was just waiting for the kill shot. The money just made him pull the trigger sooner. I tossed the notebook on the nightstand and tried to rest, but sleep was impossible. The house felt hostile. Every settle of the foundation, every floorboard creak sounded like an intruder coming to finish the job. Monday, April 8th. I was up before the sun, brewed a pot of coffee black as tar, sat at the kitchen island with my evidence, and waited for the war to start. At 9 sharp, the landline rang. I didn't know it yet, but that call was the bomb drop. "Mr. Marsh, this is Janet Pierce from Columbia Bank," the woman said. "I'm the assistant branch manager. I'm calling to verify a power of attorney document submitted to our office yesterday afternoon. It names a Mr. Christopher Blake as your authorized agent." I gripped the counter, the receiver crushed against my ear. The room seemed to list sideways like a sinking ship. "I never signed a power of attorney." Silence on the line. Then, "That's what we feared, sir. The signature didn't match your specimen card. We denied the request and froze the account immediately." Mr. Marsh, it appears someone attempted to forge your signature. My knuckles turned white. Who turned it in? I asked. Though I already knew. The filer was Mr. Christopher Blake. If this paperwork had gone through, sir, he would have had total dominion over your assets. Checking, savings, investments, all of it. He could have liquidated everything or taken out maxed out loans in your name. My legs gave out. I collapsed into the chair, my chest constricting like a vice. Air wasn't reaching my lungs. This wasn't just talk. Christopher wasn't playing games. He tried to wipe me out. My pension, the life savings Margaret and I scraped together for 40 years gone. If that teller hadn't spotted the fake, Christopher would have drained me dry before I finished my morning coffee. Mr. Marsh, are you still on the line? Yes, I rasped. I'm here. I'm sending a digital copy of the fraud attempt to your email now, Janet said. You need to get this to your lawyer immediately. And sir, call the police. This is a felony. I will. Thank you. I dropped the phone into the cradle and stared at the black screen. My hands were trembling so hard they blurred. He did this yesterday, Monday, less than 24 hours after he stood in my living room and called me crazy. He walked into my bank and tried to steal my life. Was this just simple payback? Or had he been orchestrating this nightmare from the very start? The dread that had been sitting heavy in my gut for days started to mutate, hardening into something sharp, pure rage. I dialed Rachel at 9:15 sharp. He tried to fake a power of attorney. I stammered, barely keeping it together. The bank flagged it. They shut him down, but he made the play. Rachel went quiet on the line before dropping the hammer. That is criminal fraud. Forgery. The game just changed, Mr. Marsh. Here is the plan. Call the bank. Get a copy of that document. Forward it to me right now. Then drive straight to the Bend Police Department and file a formal report. Do not pass go. Understood. This is huge, Theo. I know it feels like a violation, but legally, it is ammunition. It proves Christopher is desperate enough to break the law to steal your assets. We are going to bury him with this. I hung up and called the branch manager. Janet confirmed the email was on its way. It hit my inbox at 10:30. I clicked the attachment, my pulse thumping against my ribs. It was a standard legal form, harmless looking until you read the fine print. My name typed at the top. Christopher Blake listed as the authorized agent. And at the bottom, in careful, shaky script, a signature that mimicked mine. Close, but not close enough. The angle was off. The loop on the M was too dramatic. You could see the effort. He had practiced this, but he choked on the execution. I stared at the ink for a long time. This was not an administrative error. This was not a typo. This was cold and calculated. Christopher had sat down maybe at my own kitchen table, maybe at a Starbucks, and rehearsed stealing my identity until he felt brave enough to try it. Then he walked into a bank and tried to sign my life away. I forwarded the file to Rachel. She replied instantly, "Jackpot. I will see you at the mediation table." That afternoon, I headed to the precinct. It was a squat brick building with a tired flag snapping in the wind. I walked in and told the desk sergeant I needed to report an attempted felony. They sent me back to a Detective Morrison. He was a guy in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, radiating a calm that I definitely did not feel. He listened while I unloaded the whole story, the lottery ticket, the family war, the threats, and now the forgery. I pulled up the email on my phone. Morrison took notes, asked sharp questions, and scrutinized the signature. When I was done, he leaned back and gave me a hard look. "Mr. Marsh, this is serious. We are talking forgery and attempted grand larceny. If we can prove Mr. Blake submitted this, knowing it was fake, he is looking at real jail time. I want to press charges," I said. Morrison nodded. "We will open a file. I will subpoena the bank records and pull their security tapes. Justice grinds slow, but we will look into it." He handed me a slip of paper with a tracking number. It read, "Case number 2024, BR 04751. "Hold on to that," he said, "and watch your back. A man willing to forge legal docs is a man who has run out of options. That makes him dangerous." I tucked the slip into my wallet, sliding it right next to the winning lottery receipt. My shield and my sword. Thanks, I said. I drove home on autopilot, feeling the weight of that case number in my pocket. Turning onto Ponderosa Lane, the house looked peaceful. The birch trees Marianne planted were dancing in the wind, porch light on. Christopher's sedan in the drive, but the dynamic had flipped. I wasn't the victim cowering in the guest room anymore. I was the hunter. I had the paper trail. I kept the police report to myself. Christopher Blake needed to tread lightly, because I now had the receipts to put him away. Christopher strolled in that evening carrying a bouquet. Sad, supermarket carnations wrapped in crinkly plastic. It was 6:30. I was at the table nursing a coffee when I heard the latch click. The door swung open. He stood in the frame, holding the flowers out like a shield. A peace offering. Theo, he said, voice soft, dripping with fake sympathy. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I stayed silent. Deadpan. Christopher set the flowers on the granite and pulled out a chair. Mind if I sit? I gave a small nod. He sat opposite me, hands clasped like a choir boy. I owe you an apology. I almost laughed. The winning numbers, the greed, the lawyers, the stress got to me. I said things I didn't mean. I took a slow sip of black coffee. Which things? The part about taking the house? Or the part where you questioned my sanity? I let the anger simmer behind my eyes. I wasn't thinking straight. He leaned in, putting on his best sincere face. Theo, we are family. Claire and I, we don't want a war. We want to work this out. I set the mug down with a deliberate clink. Work what out, exactly? Everything. Christopher spread his hands wide. Look, we have issues, but we can fix this. You belong here. Look, the house is still yours. We'll set up a trust $5,000 a month specifically for you. All you have to do is drop the lawsuit. I didn't react. I just stared him down. In exchange for what? For admitting the truth, Christopher said, his voice smooth as silk. The lottery ticket was a gift. You gave it to Claire. We won, fair and square. And in return, we take care of you. $5,000 a month, Theo. That's $60,000 a year, tax-free. Hell of a lot better than your pension. You could travel, renovate the place, do whatever you want. He flashed a smile. It almost looked real. We could be a family again, Christopher pressed. Sunday dinners, game nights, just like Margaret used to host. My jaw locked tight. Stop, I said quietly. Stop what? Don't you talk about my wife. Christopher blinked, feigning shock. I'm just saying. You threaten me. I cut in, my voice dead steady. You tried to forge a power of attorney to steal my savings, and now you think a cheap bouquet and a monthly payoff wipes the slate clean? The smile slipped right off Christopher's face. For a split second, the mask dropped. I saw something cold and calculating in his eyes. Then he leaned back, crossing his arms. You really want to go to war with us? He asked. The warmth was gone. Ice took its place. I'm not fighting anyone, I said. I'm defending what's mine. What's yours? Christopher let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You're 72 years old, Theo. You're living in the past. You cling to this rotting house because it reminds you of a woman who's gone. Margaret is gone. She's been in the ground for 8 years. And you're still sitting here pretending she's going to walk through that door. I stood up, the chair screeching against the floor. Get out. Christopher stood too. He loomed over me, using every inch of his height. He looked down at me with pure contempt. You could have had an easy life, he sneered. $5,000 a month. No worries. No stress. But you'd rather die poor and alone, hugging your pride. I'd rather die with my dignity. I shot back. Christopher held my gaze for a long beat. Then he shook his head. You're going to lose everything, he said. The money, your daughter, this house, all of it. And when you do, don't say I didn't try to save you. He walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the latch. You know your problem, Theo? You think being stubborn makes you strong. It doesn't. It just makes you pathetic. He walked out. The door slammed, rattling the frames. I stood in the kitchen, listening to his heavy steps fade down the hall. I grabbed the flowers, cheap supermarket roses wrapped in crinkly cellophane, and shoved them into the trash can. I collapsed back into my chair. My hands were trembling not from fear, but from pure rage. Christopher started with threats. When those failed, he pivoted to bribery and emotional blackmail, and when the charm didn't work, the mask came off again. Just a cold, cruel man who thought a checkbook solved every problem. He thought I was weak enough to be bought. He was dead wrong. Still, his words stung. Was I just clinging to the past? Using Margaret's memory as a crutch? Maybe this old house, the ghosts in the halls, maybe it was all just a way to hold on to something that was gone. But it was mine. My history, my memories, my home. And I'd be damned if I let a shark like Christopher Blake take it. I lay in bed that night, staring up at the dark ceiling. I knew it wasn't over. Christopher would escalate. Men like him always did. When money doesn't talk and threats don't land, they find a sharper weapon. But for the first time since Margaret passed, I remembered who the hell I was. Thomas Miller. Engineer. Builder. Survivor. I designed bridges that withstood hurricanes. I built a foundation that weathered 36 years of storms. I built a life with Margaret that a man like Christopher couldn't even comprehend, let alone steal. And I wasn't going to let him break me now. Then, the following Tuesday, the knock came. It was firm. Official, the kind of rap on the door that drops your stomach into your shoes before you even touch the deadbolt. I opened the door to a woman holding a clipboard, a county ID badge clipped to her blazer. She looked to be in her early 40s, dark hair in a tight ponytail, with eyes that looked perpetually exhausted. "Mr. Thomas Miller?" she asked. "Yes. I'm Lisa Hernandez. I'm an investigator with Dashes County Adult Protective Services. We received a disturbing report regarding your welfare. I need to conduct an immediate assessment to determine if you are safe and capable of self-care." My gut twisted. "Christopher, who filed the report?" I asked. "I'm not at liberty to disclose that, sir," Lisa replied. "May I come in?" I wanted to slam the door in her face. I wanted to call my daughter, but I knew that would just tighten the noose. Refusing entry looked suspicious, like I had something to hide. "Of course," I lied, stepping aside. Lisa walked into my living room and settled onto the couch like she already owned the place. The plastic click of the pen echoed in the silent room as she dropped her clipboard onto the coffee table. "Mr. Marsh, I need to run through a standard questionnaire. Just give me your best guess on these. There's no pass or fail here. I'm just trying to get a baseline on your living situation." I sank into Margaret's old armchair. My hands rested calmly on the fabric, but inside my chest, my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Can you tell me today's date?" Lisa asked, eyes on her paper. "Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. "And the current president?" I gave her the name. She kept firing off questions. "What is your current address? How long have you resided here? What was your former profession? Any chronic conditions? Are you currently on a prescription regimen?" I delivered every answer with surgical precision, channeling the same authority I used to command during board meetings at the state capitol. "Mr. Marsh, the referral we received cited incidents of significant memory loss and disorientation. Have you noticed any episodes like that?" "Absolutely not," I stated, locking eyes with her. "Never." "Do you handle your own banking?" "Yes. Every bill is paid the day it arrives. I've balanced my own ledger every 30 days for 40 years without an error." "Do you cook for yourself?" "Every night." "And you share this residence with your daughter and son-in-law?" "They live with me," I corrected sharply. "This is my deed. I took them in 8 years ago when they went belly up financially." Lisa scribbled something down. Her face was a mask. I couldn't tell if I was winning or digging my own grave. "Mr. Marsh, do you mind if I take a quick tour? I just need to verify the safety of the environment. Be my guest." We rose and started the inspection. She headed straight for the kitchen. The countertops were gleaming. The fridge was organized with military efficiency, fresh produce, milk, eggs, leftovers dated and sealed in Tupperware. The stove was immaculate. No gas left running, no grease traps, Not a single hazard to be found. We inspected the bathroom next. Spotless, towels aligned by color, the medicine cabinet arranged by height, my blood pressure pills in a neat row, every label facing forward. Then came my bedroom. Bed tight enough to bounce a quarter off, laundry hampered, Margaret's picture watching over the room, and the lottery ticket safely tucked in the bottom drawer. Finally, I led her out to the workshop in the backyard. Lisa stepped over the threshold and just stopped. Every wrench and hammer hung on its outline on the pegboard. The workbench was dust-free, the floor swept clean of sawdust. Sitting on the display shelf were the small projects I'd whittled over the years. Birdhouses, jewelry boxes, an intricate maple bowl. Lisa lifted a birdhouse, running her thumb over the sanded roof. "This is incredible craftsmanship. You made this recently? Keeps the arthritis at bay," I muttered. She placed it back with genuine care. "Mr. Marsh, I've been a caseworker for 12 years. I know the difference between a man who needs assisted living and a man who's being railroaded. You don't fit the profile in this file." The tension left my body in a rush. "So, you're dropping the inquiry?" "I'm legally required to speak with your neighbors and family," Lisa said, closing her folder. "But from where I'm standing, there isn't a shred of evidence that you're incapacitated. Your house is spotless. You're sharp as a tack. You're in great shape." She paused at the front door, extending a card. "If you ever find yourself in actual trouble, real trouble, you call me." She nodded and walked out to her car. I threw the deadbolt and slumped against the wood, the tremors finally reaching my hands. I'd played the part, aced the quiz, held the line, but standing there in the silence of my own hallway, the shame washed over me. I had to audition for the right to live in my own house. I had to prove to a total stranger that I wasn't a liability, a lunatic, or a danger to society. 72 years on this earth, and I was scrutinized like a toddler who couldn't be trusted with scissors. This was Christopher. He filed the report. I felt it in my bones. He called Adult Protective Services and painted me as senile and hazardous. He weaponized the state against me, praying they'd strip my rights and hand him the guardianship. That snake. I made my way to the sink for a glass of water, trying to steady the glass against my rattling teeth. Lisa was going to talk to him next. I knew his script. He'd be soft-spoken, worried. The dutiful son-in-law. He'd spin lies about me leaving the gas on, getting lost in the yard, forgetting who people were. He'd craft a tragedy about a fragile old man circling the drain. And he was charming enough to sell it. For the first time since this nightmare started, a cold dread settled in my gut. It wasn't about the savings account or the real estate anymore. It was the terror of losing my sovereignty, my autonomy, the basic human right to exist on my own terms within my own four walls. That's what Christopher was hunting. Not just my wealth, he wanted my freedom. Lisa hit the neighbors the next morning. Bernard was on the phone 5 minutes after she drove off. "That son of a bitch tried to get you committed, didn't he?" He was practically shouting, vibrating with rage. Lisa just walked out the door. She grilled us memory, habits, the works. Wanted to know if you ever seemed lost or were a danger to yourself. "And?" I asked. I told her the truth. "You've got more wits about you than half the guys still punching a clock." Maureen didn't hold back. Said Christopher Blake ought to rot for this stunt. "We set the record straight, Theo. You're solid. This whole accusation is pure trash." I squeezed my eyes shut, letting out a breath. "Thanks." Then he added, "She asked if we'd go on record in court." I told her. In a heartbeat, Bernard's voice dropped. "You aren't fighting this solo, Theo. Got it?" I got it. Later that day, another fist rapped on my front door. It was Pastor Joyce Morgan standing on the porch, 67 years old and freshly retired from First Community, silver-haired, with that rock-steady demeanor that had anchored our flock for 3 decades. She was tight with Bernard and Maureen, too. "Tom," she said, pulling me into a fierce hug. Maureen called, "I needed you to know the church has your back. The whole town does." She breezed past me and took a seat at the kitchen table. She fished a heavy manila folder from her purse. "I've known you 16 years, Joyce started, since Margaret and I were on the missions committee together. I've watched you be a devoted husband, a doting father, and a damn good neighbor. When Margaret passed, you bore that weight with nothing but grace. She flipped the folder open, fanning out 10 handwritten notes across the wood. These are from the congregation, folks who know the real you. Every single one is ready to stand up for you in court. I stared at the paper trail of my life. My throat constricted as I reached for the top sheet. It was from Tom and Susan Reed, a couple 2 streets over, I'd barely exchanged 10 words with. They wrote about seeing me at the hardware store every Saturday for years, always sharp, polite, helping others find what they needed. They ended it by saying they'd do anything to assist my case. My vision blurred. Why? Why go to this trouble? Joyce reached over, gripping my hand tight. Because people loved Margaret, and they love you too. Thursday morning, April 18th. The phone rang. It was Lisa. Mr. Marsh. I'm shutting this investigation down. The report is officially unsubstantiated. I found zero proof of cognitive decline or self-neglect. You are fully competent to handle your own life. The tension left my body in a rush. Thank you. I spoke with your son-in-law yesterday, she added. He threw a lot of accusations at the wall. Memory loss, confusion, none of it stuck. Everyone else contradicted him. So, where does that leave us? I'm flagging this as a malicious filing motivated by financial gain. If Mr. Blake tries this again without cause, he's looking at serious legal blowback. I sank into my chair, the receiver still glued to my ear. Relief washed over me, hot on the heels of rage. Christopher swung for my freedom, my independence, and he missed. Thanks, Lisa. Take care, Mr. Marsh. That night, Bernard and Maureen insisted I come over for supper. But walking in, I realized it wasn't a quiet meal for 3. Pastor Joyce was waiting. So were Jim and Carol Patterson, old neighbors from down the block. Figured you needed the crowd, Maureen said, shepherding me through the door. The dining table was decked out with Maureen's good china. Pot roast, mash, green beans, scratch-made rolls, the exact Sunday spread Margaret used to cook. Sitting there, surrounded by them, a feeling hit me that had been missing since the funeral. I existed. Bernard hoisted his drink. To Thomas Miller, the man who didn't let some punk steal his home. Laughter filled the room. Glasses clinked. We dug in, talking about everything and absolutely nothing. The weather, the Blazers game, Joyce's new grandbaby, Jim's retirement. Not a word about the lottery, Christopher, or the investigation. They just let me be Theo. I looked around the table, my chest aching. When Margaret died, I whispered. Silence falling over the room. I was lonely. Thought that would change when Claire and Christopher moved in. But the loneliness stayed. They never saw me. They looked right through me. I swallowed the lump in my throat. But you guys, you see me. You really do. Maureen dabbed at her eyes. Bernard cleared his throat, voice rough. All right, enough of that. Eat your roast. I stayed late, drying dishes for Maureen while Bernard and Jim debated baseball stats in the living room. Walking home, the stars hung bright and razor-sharp against the high desert blackness. I slept like the dead that night, the first real rest I'd had in months. Friday morning, April 19th, the email from Rachel hit my inbox. The subject line was grim. Mediation scheduled. Thursday, May 2nd, 10 a.m. Oregon Lottery Commission Headquarters. Salem. The battlefield. Be ready. This is it. I read those words 3 times. I stood up, poured a black coffee, and stared through the glass at the birch trees Margaret had put in the ground 36 years ago. The countdown had started. The moment that would define the rest of my life. I didn't feel fear, just cold resolve. The week leading up to the sit-down felt less like a settlement negotiation and more like the days before a murder trial. Rachel was on the line every single day. Monday, April 22nd. She mapped out the war zone. It's not a courtroom, Theo, but it's formal. There's a mediator, neutral party, professional. Christopher Shark gets the first bite. He presents their case, then I hit back with ours. They're going to grill you. Keep your answers short, honest, and punchy. Do not ramble. Do not let them see you bleed. Mr. Morton, that's Christopher's attorney. He's going to paint you as a villain. Old, bitter, greedy. Do not let him get inside your head. I'll try, I said. You won't just try, Mr. Marsh. You'll survive. Tuesday was dress rehearsal. Rachel drilled me with mock cross-examinations over the phone. Why hand the ticket to Claire? Because she's my daughter. It was a token gesture. I wasn't thinking about the jackpot. It was a piece of paper worth $2. Did you explicitly say it was a gift? I said, here, take this. Did you expect her to return it if the numbers hit? The silence hung heavy. No, I didn't think about it at all. It was impulse. Good. That's the weapon. The truth. Stick to it. Wednesday was evidence day. Rachel fanned out the arsenal. The quick stop receipt proving I bought both tickets in one go. The bank statement with the debit charge stamped in black and white. The power of attorney document with Christopher's clumsy forgery of my signature. And the smoking gun. The police report from Adult Protective Services calling their elder abuse claim exactly what it was. Malicious. Stanley Morton knew we had it all. The forgery, the false APS claim, Rachel said. I'd bet my license he wants off this case. But he's trapped. He filed the suit. Now he has to ride it all the way down. That night, sleep was a ghost. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, mind racing. Claire was my flesh and blood. If I won this fight, I'd be stripping her of $95 million. She'd walk away with zero, and she would hate me until the day I died. Was the money worth the soul of my family? I paced the house in the dark, drifting through the living room where Margaret and I used to binge old movies, through the kitchen that still seemed to echo with her humming over the stove, down the hall, past the shrine of us, Margaret, me, and Claire at 10 years old, grinning on a beach that felt a lifetime away. I built these walls. I laid these floors. This wasn't just real estate. It was Margaret and me, built from our sweat and our dreams. And Christopher had the nerve to tell me to get out. I went back to the bedroom and sank onto Margaret's side, the way I always did when the world got too loud. This house is you, Marie, I whispered to the dark. It's us. And Christopher says, I have to leave the home we built. I closed my eyes and the answer came. I wasn't doing this for the payout. I was doing it for the principle, for the right to exist in my own home, for dignity. I summoned her voice steady, kind, unbreakable. You've never run from a fight, Tom. Don't start now. Thursday morning, May 1st. I was up at 5:30. I lay there for a beat, staring at the plaster, then got up and turned on the shower. I dressed like I was going to war. Crisp white button-down, dark slacks. The same jacket I wore to bury Margaret. It still fit. At 6 sharp, a knock rattled the back door. Bernard was there, clutching a grease-stained paper bag. Maureen made waffles, he grunted, shoving the bag at me. Figured you need some fuel. I took it. Thanks, Bernie. He looked me dead in the eye. You ready for this? No, I said. But I'm going anyway. Bernard cracked a smile. That's courage, Theo. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and saddling up anyway. I choked down a waffle at the kitchen island. Then I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and the dossier Rachel gave me and marched out to the truck. Bernard stood guard in his driveway. He raised a hand. I gave him a nod. I pulled onto Ponderosa Lane and pointed the truck west. The drive to Salem was a 2.5-hour haul. Highway 26 snakes through the Cascades, cutting through timber country and river towns. I killed the radio. I needed the silence. I thought about Margaret, about the day we stood on this empty lot in 1988, just dirt, sagebrush, and a promise. Here, right here, Teddy. This is where we plant our flag. Her voice echoed in my memory. Then the image shifted to Claire. I remembered the weight of her tiny body in my arms the day she arrived, the wobble of her first bike ride, the way she'd slump against my shoulder, dead to the world, on the drive home, and then Christopher. The sneer he gave me in the kitchen, spitting the words like venom. You're pathetic. I thought about the legacy I'd constructed. Not just timber and drywall, it was a life, a bedrock, something meant to outlast me. Margaret always had that saying, build the foundation right, and the house won't fall. I'd done my part, but Christopher had spent 8 years taking a sledgehammer to the supports, and today we'd see if the structure could survive the tremors. I hit the Salem city limits at 9:30. I swung into the lot facing the Oregon Lottery headquarters. For a minute, I just sat there, knuckles white on the wheel, forcing air into my lungs. In, out. Rachel's sedan pulled up a second later. She slotted in beside me, stepped out, and tapped on my glass. I lowered the window. "You good?" she asked. "Locked and loaded." She flashed a grin. "All right then. Let's go take back what's yours." The Commission building is a monolith of glass and steel on Liberty Street. Cold, impersonal, the opposite of justice. We walked in at 9:45. Crossing the street, we pushed through the heavy doors into a lobby that smelled of floor wax and bureaucracy. Security gave our IDs a quick scan, ushered us through the mags, and jerked a thumb toward the lift. "7th floor," Rachel murmured. The ride up was quiet. My hands stopped shaking. The fog lifted. 2 weeks of hell led to this. Poring over files with Rachel, drilling testimony, dissecting the timeline until I could recite it in my sleep. I didn't just have facts. I had the truth. The doors slid open. The waiting area was a soul-sucking gray. Cheap carpet, uncomfortable chairs, the hum of a water cooler, and across the divide, the enemy camp. Christopher looked like $1,000,000 in a fresh Navy suit. Tailored. Sharp. He was lounged back, leg crossed, arm draped over the adjacent seat like he owned the place. Total arrogance. Claire was 2 seats down, shrinking into herself, eyes glued to her screen. She looked, washed out, exhausted. Hovering nearby was Stanley Morton, 54. Silver hair, Rolex flashing. His leather briefcase was open, prepping for war. The elevator dinged. Head snapped up. Christopher didn't bother rising. He just locked eyes with me. Face blank, immovable. A dominance play. Claire flicked her eyes toward me for a heartbeat. Then she retreated back to her phone. That stung worse than any of Christopher's insults. Rachel nudged my arm. "Over here, Theo." We claimed the chairs on the far wall. 10 feet of carpet lay between us. But it felt like an ocean. At exactly 9:55, the conference room door unlatched. A woman with a badge stepped into the hall. "We're ready." Christopher was up instantly. He strutted into the room, staking his claim. Claire trailed behind him, eyes on the floor. Morton gave a curt, shark-like nod to Rachel, gathered his gear, and followed. We brought up the rear. The room was a claustrophobic rectangle. Long table, skyline view through the windows. A whiteboard stood ready. Water bottles and a tissue box centered on the table like ominous centerpieces. At the far end sat a man in his 60s, bifocals, gray hair, poker face. He rose as we walked in. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Howard Phillips. I'll be mediating today. Please, sit." The opposition took the right flank. Rachel and I took the left. We were face to face, Howard acting as the buffer. My senses were dialed up to 11. Claire was still avoiding my gaze. Christopher leaned back, forming a steeple with his fingers. Smug. Howard shuffled some papers. "Here's how this works. We're here to settle the dispute regarding the ownership of Oregon Lottery Ticket 471-8823, C, dated April 3rd, 2024. I'm here to guide the conversation and help you find common ground. I can't mandate a decision, but understand that my report goes to the Commission, and they take my recommendations seriously. Discussions here stay in this room unless you mutually agree to release them." He scanned the table. "Clear?" We all gave a silent nod. "All right." Howard capped his pen and interlaced his fingers on the mahogany table. "All right, let's get moving. Mr. Morton, you filed the initial complaint. The floor is yours." Stanley Morton rose, buttoning his suit jacket with a sharp snap. He cleared his throat, locking eyes with the mediator. "Thank you, Director Phillips. I'm appearing on behalf of Mr. Christopher Blake and Miss Claire Marsh." He swept a hand toward the couple. Claire refused to lift her eyes. "The facts of this case are painfully simple," Stanley declared. On April 3rd, Mr. Thomas Miller walked into a quick stop in Bend, Oregon, and purchased 2 Powerball tickets. He took one of those slips of paper home and presented it to his daughter, Claire, as a present. It wasn't a loan. It wasn't a transaction. It was a gift. No strings attached, no fine print, no conditions. Under Oregon state statutes, that meets every criteria for a legal gift. Stanley let silence hang in the air for a second. 3 weeks later, those numbers hit a $95 million jackpot. Miss Marsh verified the ticket and shared the good news. During that 3-week window, Mr. Marsh showed zero interest in the property he'd relinquished. Not until he realized what it was worth. Stanley's tone was liquid smooth, practicing his closing argument. The law recognizes informal gifts of personal property. And make no mistake, a lottery ticket is property. The moment Mr. Marsh handed it over and said, "This is for you," title transferred. Seller's remorse, or in this case, giver's remorse, does not undo a legal transfer. He shot a glance at the mediator. "We request this commission affirm Miss Claire Marsh as the sole owner of the winning ticket and authorize the immediate release of funds." Stanley took his seat. Christopher offered a tight, smug nod. Claire remained frozen, staring at her knuckles turning white in her lap. Howard scribbled something on his notepad. He peered over his glasses at Rachel. "Miss Kemp, your statement." As Rachel stood, the gravity of the moment hit me like a freight train. We'd gone over the narrative 100 times in her office, but seeing my daughter sitting there, the script dissolved. All I had left was the ugly truth. Rachel straightened her blazer, radiating a quiet, dangerous calm. "Mr. Morton painted a pretty picture," she started, but he conveniently omitted the only facts that actually matter. She reached into her folio and slapped 2 sheets of paper onto the table, sliding them toward the director. "This," Rachel tapped the top sheet, "is the transaction receipt from the Quick Stop on Highway 97. April 3rd, 2024. Timestamp: 2:17 in the afternoon. 2 Powerball entries. Paid via debit card. Registered to Thomas Miller." She revealed the second page. "And here is Mr. Marsh's bank statement, verifying a $4 deduction at that exact moment." Howard leaned in, scrutinizing the fine print through his bifocals. Rachel didn't let up. "My client purchased both. He paid for both. Legally, he owns both." Stanley squeaked his chair. The muscles in Christopher's jaw bunched up. Mr. Marsh handed his daughter a $2 slip of thermal paper. Rachel clarified. At that moment, it was worth less than a greeting card. "But we aren't talking about a trinket anymore. We're talking about $95 million. Transferring an asset of that magnitude requires explicit documentation under lottery regulations. Mr. Marsh has the receipt. Mr. Blake has nothing." Howard shifted his gaze to me. "Mr. Marsh, do you attest to purchasing these tickets on April 3rd? "Yes, sir." My voice was thinner than I wanted, but it didn't shake. "And the record shows 2 entries. $4. Why purchase 2? I shot a glance at Rachel. She gave me the go-ahead. "My buddy Bernard dared me," I replied. "Figured if I was throwing away $2, might as well throw away 4. It was pocket change. I didn't actually expect to win. It was a whim." Howard scratched a note. "And you passed one to your daughter. Why?" I focused on Claire. She was still studying the laminate table, hands locked in a death grip. "She's my little girl," I said softly. "It was just a $2 ticket. I wanted us to share the luck." Howard's face lost some of its hardness. "Mr. Marsh, why did you file this dispute with the commission?" I inhaled deeply. "Because 72 hours after the numbers came up, her husband told me to pack my bags. He told me the house I built with my own hands 36 years ago, the house my late wife died in, wasn't mine anymore. He said the $95 million wasn't mine. He tried to erase me." Stanley leaned in. Predatory. "Mr. Marsh, you are 72, correct? Is your memory of April 3rd actually reliable?" Rachel's hand found my forearm, a warning to breathe. "My memory is crystal clear," I declared. "I rode shotgun with Bernard Smith down to the Quick Stop. Dave Wilson, the owner, personally handed me those tickets. I swiped my own debit card. I still have the receipt. I haven't forgotten a single detail. Stanley slumped back in his chair, looking like he'd just swallowed a lemon. Rachel dipped into her briefcase one more time, retrieving a thicker, more ominous envelope. There is one last thing, she added, her voice sharpening like a blade. On April 8th, Mr. Blake attempted to file a power of attorney with Columbia Bank, claiming full control over Mr. Marsh's finances. She slapped a letter onto the mahogany table. This is the official rejection from the bank, dated April 24th. They refused the document because the signature didn't match Mr. Marsh's records. They flagged it immediately as potential fraud. Howard's eyebrows shot up as he snatched the paper from the table. Rachel wasn't done yet. She slid a second document right next to the first one. And this is the police report Mr. Marsh filed with the Bend P.D. on April 9th. Case number 2024-BR751. It outlines a clear attempt at financial fraud via forgery. The room plummeted into a dead silence. Howard shifted his gaze to Christopher. Mr. Blake, care to explain this? All the color drained from Christopher's face. That was just a big misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Rachel cut him off, her tone lethal. You forged a legal document in my client's name to hijack his bank accounts. That is not a misunderstanding. It is fraud. And it establishes a pattern of manipulation, coercion, and now criminal forgery to loot my client's assets. Howard took off his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose in exhaustion. Mr. Morton, were you privy to this? Stanley Morton looked visibly shaken. Absolutely not. Howard slid his glasses back on, drilling a hole through Christopher with his stare. Mr. Blake, forging a power of attorney is a felony offense in Oregon. If this leaves this room, you are looking at criminal charges. Christopher opened his mouth to stammer, but Stanley gripped his arm hard. We need a recess, Stanley barked, practically hauling Christopher out of his chair and into the hall. The latch clicked shut, leaving a heavy silence. I sat motionless, hands clasped on the table, my heart hammering against my ribs. Opposite me, Claire finally raised her head. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but she wasn't looking at me. Her gaze was fixed on the bank letter. The police report, the undeniable proof of what her husband was capable of. And for the first time in 8 years, I watched my daughter break down. If you're still following Tom's battle for his family, you're here for the whole ugly truth. Just a quick heads up. While based on true events, some details have been dramatized for effect. If this is getting too heavy, feel free to scroll away. But trust me, you don't want to miss Claire's turning point. It's the most gut-wrenching part of the saga. You will want to see this. When the break ended, Claire was still there, gripping a wad of crumpled tissues. The clock read 12:45. Her face was puffy and tear-streaked. Christopher sat next to her, arms crossed defensively, jaw clenched tight. Stanley Morton was missing in action. He had stepped out to do damage control on the phone. Howard Phillips cleared his throat. Mrs. Marsh, he began softly, I need to hear it from you. Walk me through the moment your father gave you that ticket. Claire's voice was a ghost of a whisper. I don't know what to say. Howard kept his tone gentle. No rush. Just tell me what you remember. Yes. Did he say anything specific? Claire swallowed hard. Dad said he bought a lottery ticket on a whim. Said it was silly. He was smiling. It was the first time I'd seen him smile in months. My chest constricted at the memory. Howard nodded slowly. Did he explicitly state the prize money would belong to you? No, Claire murmured. He just passed it to me. I said, thanks, Dad. That was it. Howard scribbled a note. And when the numbers hit, what happened then? Claire's voice cracked. Christopher checked the numbers. He went crazy. He started shouting that we were rich. He was on the phone within minutes. And your father? Dad just stood there, she whispered. He looked lost. Christopher squirmed in his seat. Howard shot him a warning glare before locking eyes with Claire again. Mrs. Marsh, look at me. Answer honestly. Ignore everyone else. Did your father ever mistreat you? In all those 8 years, did he ever make you feel unwanted? Did he ever attempt to harm or manipulate you? The silence stretched. thick and suffocating. Then, the tears started flowing again. No. Howard leaned in closer. No? Claire shook her head violently. Dad never. He showed us nothing but kindness. Christopher tried to interrupt. Claire. But Claire's voice boomed, louder and stronger than I'd heard in years. Dad never said he didn't want us there. He never griped about it. Not a single peep. She spun toward Howard, the words tumbling out of her mouth now. Christopher told me, you resented us, Dad. He swore you only let us crash here out of obligation. He said you were bad-mouthing us to the neighbors every time we left the house. Her voice cracked. But you never said any of that. Christopher put those words in your mouth, and I bought it. I chose to trust him over my own flesh and blood. The color drained from Christopher's face. That is not Claire whipped around to face him. You told me he wanted us out on the street. You claimed he was just too polite to kick us out. You said you were protecting me. Protecting me from what? Claire screamed. From the man who raised me? The man who took us in when we were flat broke? The tension in the room spiked. I rubbed my eyes, locking gaze with my daughter. Claire turned back to the mediator, her voice trembling. My father never wanted us to leave. That was Christopher. He wanted to push him out of the picture. And I stood by and let him. Christopher shot up from his chair. This is insane. Claire, we are going. Mr. Blake, Howard barked. Sit down. We don't have to listen to this. I'm not going anywhere with you. Claire found her spine, her voice steadying. Christopher froze. Excuse me? I said I'm not leaving with you. We're done. Christopher turned a violent shade of crimson. Claire, use your head. I have been using it. For weeks. I'm finished. Right on cue. The door swung open, and Stanley Morton marched back in. He scanned the room, Claire's tear-stained cheeks, Christopher's fury, Howard's stone-cold expression. He dropped his briefcase on the table with a thud. Mr. Phillips, I'm formally withdrawing from this case. Effective immediately. Christopher's head snapped toward him. You can't just bail on me. Watch me, Stanley said, voice flat. Given the evidence of fraud in this new testimony, I can't ethically touch this. He nodded at Howard. Sorry for the circus. He grabbed his bag, looked Christopher dead in the eye, and said, Good luck, Mr. Blake. You're gonna need a miracle. Then he walked. The latch clicked shut. Dead silence. Howard eyed Christopher. Mr. Blake, do you intend to proceed without counsel? Christopher stood there, seething, chest heaving. This is garbage. That old fossil is rigging the game. Sit down. Howard's voice was like ice. Sit or get out. Christopher glared at Claire. Claire, we are leaving right now. Claire didn't flinch. Claire! She whispered one word. No. Christopher stared at her, his face contorting into something ugly. He turned to me, eyes dripping with venom. You haven't seen the last of me. He spat, then stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to shake the frame. The room went quiet. Howard let out a long breath. Mrs. Marsh, you okay? Claire shook her head. No, but I'll get there. Howard looked at me, then over at Rachel. I'm shutting this mediation down. I'll issue the written findings within 5 business days, but I think the writing is on the wall here. He turned to me. Mr. Marsh, looking at the evidence, the purchase receipt, the missing transfer papers, the conspiracy to defraud, and your daughter's testimony, I'm recommending the commission recognize you as the sole owner of the disputed ticket. I finally exhaled, lungs burning. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. Howard stood up, meeting adjourned. The room started clearing out. Howard gathered his files and made his exit. Rachel stepped into the hall to make a call, leaving just the two of us, me and Claire, sitting across the table. Neither of us said a word. Finally, Claire stood up. She walked around the table, slow and shaky. She stopped right in front of me. Dad, I messed up. We stood in that conference room for what felt like an hour, but it was probably only 3 minutes. She sobbed. I tore up. She apologized again. I told her I knew. Rachel knocked softly on the doorframe. Time to move. Claire took her car. I took mine. I honestly didn't know if I'd ever see her again after that. I left Salem at 2 o'clock, hit Highway 22 heading east. 3-hour drive. The afternoon sun was brutal, glaring off the asphalt. I replayed Claire's face, Christopher's rage, Howard's ruling. I killed the radio. I just needed quiet. Halfway home, the car's Bluetooth system rang. Bernard. How'd it play out? He asked. I swallowed hard. I think I won. And Claire? My voice cracked. She came clean. She broke down and told the truth. The line went silent. Then Bernard whispered, "Good man, Theo." I pulled into my driveway at 5 o'clock. Christopher's truck was there. Claire's sedan was parked right next to it. I sat in the car for a second, heart hammering. Then I went inside. Christopher was upstairs in the bedroom. The door was shut, but the floorboards creaked on the other side. Downstairs, I found Claire. She was at the sink, back to me. I hovered in the frame of the entrance. "Claire?" Her spine snapped straight. "Please," she whispered, the sound fragile as glass. "I can't do this right now. I'm sorry." She brushed past me, eyes glued to the floor, and fled up the stairs. I remained in the silence of the kitchen, tracking the heavy thuds above. Muffled shouting started. "Christopher!" His tone was a serrated blade. Then Claire's voice, soft and crumbling into weeping. Every instinct screamed at me to march up there, pound on the wood, and demand to see my girl. I stayed put. That bridge had burned. Friday morning, Christopher stormed out at 8 o'clock sharp. He didn't return until past 10, probably scheming with a new attorney. I didn't bother asking. Earlier that day, I was in the shop, smoothing out a table leg, when a white slip of paper shuffled under the doorframe. I dropped the sanding block and retrieved the note. Single fold. Claire's distinct script. "Dad, forgive me. I can't look you in the eye. I broke this, and I don't know how to repair it. I'm terrified. Just know I love you. Always have." I collapsed onto the bench, clutching that paper like a lifeline while I wept. The weekend dragged on in agonizing slow motion. Living there was like walking through a demilitarized zone. Christopher treated me like a ghost, except for one run-in near the bathroom. The look he gave me was pure venom, though he kept his mouth shut. I only spotted Claire 2 times, once in the corridor. She froze. We just stared, suspended in the awkwardness. "Hi, Dad," she breathed, then bolted. Later, I caught a glimpse of her through the window, slumped in her car, sobbing into her palms. My heart ached to run out there. I wanted to fix it, but I was useless. Bernard swung by Saturday with a loaf of banana bread from Morin's. "You hanging in there?" I gave a non-committal shrug. 8 years under this roof, and suddenly we're strangers. Bernard understood. Christopher is a lost cause. But give Claire some space, Theo. Sunday, I broke a long streak, something I hadn't done since we buried Marianne. I attended service. First Community hadn't changed a bit. The creaky pews, the stained glass, the scent of lemon polish and old paper, it was all there. Pastor Joyce caught me on the way out. She approached with a gentle smile. "Word is, the mediation went in your favor." "Seems that way," I replied. "I'll get the final word this week." I hesitated. "Claire, she's taking it hard." Joyce squeezed my arm. "She's resilient. The truth is a bitter pill, but she swallowed it now." Back home, I hid in the shop, whittling a small cross. I wasn't sure who I was making it for. Maybe for my late wife. Maybe for my own soul. Monday, my eyes snapped open at 5 in the morning. I brewed a pot, forced down some toast, and held a vigil by the phone. Silence. Tuesday and Wednesday passed without a word. Thursday, May 9th. Up at 5 again. Shower, clothes, coffee, stare at the receiver. At 10:15, it finally chirped. "Rachel." I grabbed it instantly. "Hello, Theo." Her tone was professional, but I could hear the grin behind it. We did it. My legs gave out, and I sank into the chair. Howard released the findings. The commission signed off on everything. "You won." Christopher's claim was thrown out completely. "You are the sole legal owner of both winning tickets." My throat closed up. "Both of them?" I choked out the words. Zero proof of transfer, she said. No contract, no signatures, nothing. Theo, that's a $95 million payout. The room spun. I stared blankly at the plaster. 95 million. Victory. Bring in the physical ticket, Rachel instructed. We'll start the claim. 11 days for verification, then the wire hits. After Uncle Sam takes his cut, you're looking at $47.5 million clear. I pressed the phone to my head, trying to comprehend that kind of wealth. Now, Rachel shifted gears. We need to serve the eviction papers. State law mandates a 60-day notice. 60 days? I echoed. I'll get them drawn up. Send them when you're ready. By that afternoon, the PDFs were in my inbox. I printed 2 sets. One for my son-in-law, one for my daughter. I laid them on the desk and just looked at them for an hour, until Bernard rang. You serve 'em yet? He asked. No. What's the holdup? I don't know. But on Tuesday, May 14th, I pulled the trigger. I didn't have the guts to look them in the eye. I just couldn't. So, I dropped the 2 eviction notices on the kitchen island names scrawled on the envelopes and bolted to Bernard's place. I stayed away for 2 solid hours before driving back. Christopher's truck was gone. The envelopes had vanished, and the living room wall was sporting a fresh, jagged hole where Christopher had put his fist through the drywall. Margaret's framed photo, the one that always lived on the mantel, was lying face down on the floorboards, glass shattered. My hands wouldn't stop trembling as I gathered the pieces. Bernard was right. I had to clear out. Upstairs, the bedroom door was shut tight. I tapped on the wood. Claire? Her voice was barely a whisper. Come in, Dad. I pushed the door open. She was perched on the edge of the mattress, an open suitcase swallowing neat stacks of folded clothes. He's gone, she murmured. Says he's crashing at a motel. She looked up, eyes red. Said a lot of things I won't repeat. You okay? No, I said, but I'm safe. 60 days, I told her gently. State law mandates it. I'm sorry, Claire. She just shook her head. Don't apologize. You have every right. She paused, taking a breath. I'll be out of here in 2 weeks. Christopher is grabbing his gear tomorrow. I just need a couple of days to figure out where I'm landing. Take the full 60 if you have to, I offered. But Claire wasn't having it. I can't stay here. Not after what I did. I wanted to spill my guts right then, but the words stuck in my throat. Okay, was all I managed. The next day, Wednesday the 15th, Rachel drove me down to Salem. The Oregon Lottery Commission was tucked away on the 3rd floor of a drab, gray government complex. It was all stiff suits and red tape. ID verification, ticket submission, triplicate forms, signed in blue ink. The clerk, a lady with reading glasses perched on her nose, finally looked up and flashed a warm smile. Congratulations, Mr. Marsh. Your claim processes in 11 business days. We'll reach out for the final wire transfer. She slid a receipt across the desk. Official claim code, $95 million. After taxes, $47.5 million. Life-altering money. Yet, it didn't feel real. In the parking lot, Rachel asked, "How does it feel?" "Empty," I confessed. "That'll pass," she said. "Give it time." She hesitated. "I'm setting you up with Caroline Fisher. She's a financial shark I trust. You're going to need structure accounts, investments, estate planning." The weight of it hit me. One step at a time. Driving back, my mind drifted to Margaret. What would she say? "Don't let the money rot your soul," I whispered to the windshield. "I won't, Marie. I promise." Thursday, January 16th, 10 a.m. A moving van rumbled into the driveway. Christopher had booked it. I holed up in the workshop, watching the drama unfold through the dusty window pane. Christopher was acting like a drill sergeant, barking orders at the movers, wild gestures flying everywhere. They hauled it all out, furniture boxes, the TV, the sofa, the old kitchen table. By afternoon, that truck was packed to the gills. Christopher marched up to the workshop door. Didn't knock. He just glared through the glass and spat. "You think you won? You didn't. You lost your daughter. You're gonna die alone in this house with your cash. That's exactly what you deserve. He spun on his heel and stormed off. The truck rolled out. Christopher's sedan tailed it. Finally, silence. I stood in the workshop doorway, listening to the quiet. A strange, heavy relief washed over me. The next few days were a ghost story. Claire was still there, packing in slow motion. We drifted past each other in the hall. Mumbled mornings, stiff goodnights. We were walking on eggshells, polite but distant. 3 nights after Christopher bailed, I threw some pasta on the stove. Nothing fancy, just fuel. Claire wandered down. "Smells good, Dad. There's plenty," I said. "If you're hungry." She hesitated. "Yeah, thank you." We sat at the kitchen island. The silence wasn't sharp anymore, just tired. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I'm filing for divorce. Called a lawyer today." "Good." She stared at her plate. "Gonna get my own apartment. Start fresh. Maybe find a job. Haven't worked in 8 years. You'll manage," I told her. "You're tough." "I don't feel tough," she whispered. "Strength isn't a feeling, kid," I said. "It's a choice." A faint smile touched her lips. "You sound like Grandpa." He used to say that. He was a smart man. 3 days later, I went to the hardware store for some sandpaper. When I got back, Claire's car was gone. Her room was scrubbed clean. Bed made, vacuum lines perfect on the carpet. On the counter sat a lone envelope with my name on it. My hands shook as I reached for it. 2 pages of her careful handwriting. It started with "Dear Dad" and ended with "I love you." In between lay all the words she couldn't say to my face. I pulled up a chair and tore open the envelope. 2 crumpled pages, covered front to back in her handwriting. The ink bled where tears had hit the paper. She was breaking down when she wrote this. "Dear Dad, I'm putting this in a letter because I don't have the guts to look you in the eye. I'm sorry. It feels pathetic to say, but it's the only offering I have left. I am sorry for the last 8 years, for standing by while Christopher treated you like you were invisible, for keeping my mouth shut when he kicked you out of your own home, the place you built with your bare hands, the place where Mom died, for swallowing his lies instead of trusting my gut. For 8 years, Christopher gaslighted me, saying you secretly hated us, that you were just too polite to admit it. He swore you wanted us out, that you trash-talked us to the neighbors, that you were becoming a bitter, difficult old man, and I bought it. The shame is eating me alive. The honest truth? It was easier to buy Christopher's narrative than to look in the mirror at my own guilt. I knew we were bleeding you dry. I knew Christopher was a leech, but admitting that meant I had to actually take a stand. I was spineless, terrified, and totally dependent. I lost my identity in this marriage. Dad, I turned into a stranger, a woman who could stab her own father in the back for a man who never gave a damn about her. I see it now. Christopher didn't marry me for love. He saw a payday, a house to hijack and an inheritance to steal. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I don't expect a place in your life. But you need to know I love you. I never stopped, even when I failed to show it, even when I chose him. That's over now. I filed the divorce papers. I'm leasing a small apartment of my own. I need to figure out who I am away from this wreckage. If you never want to see me again, I get it. But if there is a 1% chance, I'll stop by in 3 days. I'll knock once. If you don't answer, I'll walk away. I love you, Dad. I am so sorry. Love, Claire. I finished the last line, dropped the pages on the coffee table, and buried my face in my palms. I wept for the 8 wasted years, for Claire's suffering, and because Margaret wasn't here to guide us. But mostly, I cried because there was finally a glint of hope. She said 3 days. I spent those 72 hours manic cleaning. I vacuumed tracks into the living room carpet. I polished the glass on Margaret's portrait. I finally fixed that frame and scoured the kitchen tiles until they shined. I even prepped the guest room, though I didn't dare ask myself why. Bernard swung by on day 2. He caught me furiously scrubbing the counters. "You're gonna rub a hole right through that granite, Theo," he joked. I just handed him the letter. He took his time reading it, refolded the sheets with care, and handed them back. "She's coming home, buddy. This isn't her house anymore," I muttered. Bernard shook his head. Home isn't a zip code, it's people. By day 3, I was a basket case. Woke up at 5 in the morning, couldn't sleep, brewed coffee, paced the floor, stared down the driveway. By noon, I had convinced myself she wasn't showing. Then, at 4 o'clock sharp, tires crunched on the gravel. It was her. My heart hammered against my ribs. I froze, listening to steps on the porch. A tentative knock. I willed my legs to move. I pulled the door open. There she stood, jeans, oversized sweater, eyes puffy and raw. She'd been sobbing the whole drive over. "Hey, Dad," she croaked. "Hey, sweetheart." We hovered there, paralyzed. "Come inside," I managed. She took the sofa. I took my recliner. The silence stretched thin. "Did you read it?" she asked softly. 3 times. I meant every word. "I know." The quiet returned. I leaned forward. "Claire, listen to me closely." She looked up, a mix of terror and desperation in her gaze. "I forgive you," I said. She gasped. "I mean it, but forgiveness isn't a time machine. I can't erase the last 8 years. We have to build something new, not as parent and child under the same roof, but as 2 adults who love each other and are relearning how to trust." Her eyes welled up. "I want that. It's gonna be work," I warned. "It takes time and brutal honesty." "I'm all in, Dad. I promise." I studied her face. I saw Margaret's ghost, the eyes, the mouth, but mostly, I saw a lost woman trying to find her compass. "Then I'm all in, too." That broke her. She buried her face in her hands and fell apart, body shaking. I crossed the room and sank onto the cushion next to her. She collapsed into me, hiding in my shoulder. I wrapped my arms around her tight. First time holding my daughter in 8 years. She cried. I cried. We sat like that for a long while. Finally, Claire pulled back and wiped her cheeks. "I look like a disaster." "You've earned the right." She let out a wet, weak laugh. "Can we try something?" "Name it." "Sunday dinners. Like Mom used to make." That hit me right in the chest. Margaret's Sundays. Pot roast. Mashed potatoes. The 4 of us laughing before the world went dark. "I'd love that," I choked out. Claire nodded. "And Dad, I'm paying you back. For the rent, the utilities, everything." She insisted on paying me back. I wanted to wave it off, but I realized this penance was the only way she'd ever heal. "Fine," I told her. "We'll set up a schedule. Something manageable that won't break you." She nodded, grateful. We sat there for another hour, just talking. She described her new place, a tiny 1-bedroom studio right in the city center. She was hitting the job market, dusting off a resume that hadn't seen the light of day in 8 years. The divorce was proceeding, even though Christopher was fighting every inch of the way. She mentioned she was seeing a therapist twice a week. "I've got a lot of wreckage to sort through," she admitted. "That's brave," I told her. She shook her head. "I don't feel brave." "Courage isn't a feeling, kid," I corrected. "It's a decision." That got a genuine smile out of her. "You sound exactly like Grandpa." The man knew his stuff. Eventually, she checked the wall clock. "I better get going." I walked her to the front door. "Dad?" She paused. "I love you." "I love you too, Claire Bear." She froze. "You haven't called me that since I was a child." I looked her in the eye. "You'll never stop being my Claire Bear." Tears tracked through her makeup, but the smile stayed. She grabbed me, holding on for dear life. "Thank you." She turned and walked away. I stood on the porch, watching her taillights fade into the dark. I stepped back inside and leaned my weight against the doorframe. Finally, the suffocating weight on my chest lifted. I could actually breathe. Later, I sat out back, watching the sun burn out over the horizon. The sky was bruising over the mountains, streaks of violet and burning orange. I replayed the whole saga in my mind. The jackpot, the knife in the back, the war, the win. And now this reclaiming something I was sure was gone forever. "I'm proud of you." Marianne's voice seemed to echo in my head. "I hope so, Mari." I whispered to the empty air. My pocket vibrated. A text from Claire. "Thanks for the second chance. See you Sunday. Love you." I smirked and thumbed a reply. Love you too. 5 p.m. Sunday. I'm making the pot roast. Perfect. I climbed into my own bed, in my own damn house, and slept like the dead. Claire's letter rested on the nightstand. Sunday dinner was set. I woke up with the sun hitting Marianne's curtains, the ones she stitched by hand 30 years ago. I lay there, bathing in the light, and it hit me. This wasn't just about winning a lottery. I'd reclaimed my existence. The funds wired into my account on Tuesday, June 18th. $47,500,000. I stared at those zeros for 20 minutes before dialing Bernard. It's real, I told him. So, what's the play? He asked. Whatever I want. I earned it. The next morning, I sat down with Caroline Fisher, the financial shark Rachel vouched for. Her office was downtown, all rich leather and sweeping mountain vistas. Caroline was 56, with gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Theo, what's the goal here? She asked. Security, I said. I want to take care of my girl, and I want to build a legacy for my wife. We strategized for 2 hours. She pushed for a mix index funds, bonds, real estate, trusts, diversification. This setup nets you about $1.5 million annually in passive cash flow without touching the principal, she explained. You can live like a king and still bankroll your charities. That's when the light bulb went on. What about the seniors? I asked. The ones getting fleeced by their own families, kicked to the curb, needing legal muscle they can't afford? Caroline's face softened. A legal defense fund. With $20 million, you could keep that running in perpetuity. I thought of Marianne. She never could stand by when the little guy was getting crushed. Let's do it. I got Rachel on the line. I'm starting the Marsh Elder Protection Fund. 20 million seed money. We're going after financial predators. I want you running the legal side, and bring Lisa Hernandez on as a consultant. Rachel choked up. Theo, that's amazing. We signed the papers in July. Rachel set up shop in Portland. Lisa joined the team 3 days a week. By September, we had our first battle, an 82-year-old lady whose son forged documents to steal her house. Rachel crushed him in 6 weeks. The woman called me, sobbing. You saved my life. She wept. No, ma'am, I said. You saved yourself. We just handed you the sword. By the end of the year, the fund had backed 47 victims. Marianne would have been beaming, but I needed one last change. Come August, I listed the Ponderosa Lane property. Bernard stopped by. You sure about this? You and Marianne built this place. Every board, every nail. Christopher and Claire left a stain on these walls I can't scrub out, I said. I need a clean slate. Where to? The coast. Cannon Beach. Salt air. Just the ocean and the horizon. Somewhere I can breathe. The place sold in 3 weeks to a young couple with 2 kids. I didn't take much. Marianne's photo, my toolbox, a few pieces of furniture. In late August, I closed on a house in Cannon Beach. It was modern glass and timber hanging over the Pacific. It even had a workshop with a view, right where I could hear the crash of the waves. It wasn't the sanctuary Margaret and I had constructed from the ground up, but the deed was in my name. I remember that first dawn, heading down to the surf. The sun broke over the water, setting the Pacific on fire with bleeding oranges and golds. Every breath tasted like brine and absolute liberation. Bernard and Maureen were regulars. We'd pace the shoreline and nurse black coffee on the patio. Maureen caught my eye one afternoon. You're carrying less weight, Theo, she noted. She didn't miss a beat. Felt like I'd been hauling a boulder on my back for 8 long years, and I'd finally let it drop. Claire made the 3-hour trek from Bend every second Sunday, regular as clockwork. We'd slow cook a pot roast, trying to match Margaret's old recipe. Pig back on the deck, watching the day fade. When the papers were signed in September, I asked her the big question. How's it sit with you? Her answer was one word. Free. Terrified. Sure, but free. Come October, she landed a gig at the Bend Community Center. $15 an hour. It's peanuts, she admitted. But it's my money. I haven't made a dime of my own in 8 years. I told her I was proud. She looked shocked. Really? Damn right, I said. By December, I was hauling boxes into her new place. It was a shoebox, but spotless and completely hers. I know it's small, I started. It's perfect, she cut in. Christmas kept a low profile. Just the two of us by the water. Claire showed up with a batch of slightly scorched cookies. I handled the roast beef. We swapped presents. I handed her an old album Margaret had scrapped together. Claire reciprocated with a framed shot of her mother and me from the 90s. Dug it out of storage, she whispered. Figured it belonged with you. I broke down. A real Christmas, finally. Just us. It was plenty. Then came spring. April 2025. Exactly 12 months since the legal dust settled. I was out in the dirt one morning. Putting in daffodils, Margaret always loved those yellow blooms. I might be 73, but I've still got some grit in me. Gravel crunched in the driveway. It was Claire, waving a pair of gardening gloves. Morning, Pop. Figured you could use a second pair of hands. You don't need to do that, I said. I know. I want to. We got down in the dirt, shoulder to shoulder, restoring the beds where Margaret's garden once thrived. Dad? Yeah, honey? Thanks for not writing me off. I looked at her. I could never quit on you. Her face fell. Christopher did. I ain't Christopher. No. She smiled weakly. You definitely aren't. We stood up, dusting the soil off our jeans. When do these pop? Late spring? Maybe May. Mom would have gotten a kick out of this. She sure would. We settled down on the deck stairs to rest. The morning heat rolled off the ocean. I took stock of it all. The property I'd secured, my girl sitting right there, the flowers waiting to break through the soil. This was the life I'd gone to war to get back. I used to figure a home was just timber and shingles. Just boards and nails, I told her. Stuff you can measure with a tape. Claire stayed quiet. But I was wrong. A house is a vault for memories. It's the souls inside. It's your mother's laughter echoing in the hall, your baby steps, the arguments, the apologies, the love that held it all together. Is that why you went to the mat? She asked. I fought because letting Christopher steal this place would be like saying none of our history mattered. Like 36 years with your mom could just be wiped out by some grifter's greed. I wasn't chasing a paycheck. I was fighting for significance. Claire rested her head on my shoulder. You won, Dad. We both did. I just sat there, watching the Pacific roll out to the edge of the world. The winning ticket, the knife in the back, the court case, the triumph, the trust fund now supporting 47 souls, and Claire, finally stitching herself back together. Margaret's legacy was safe. I felt happy. Not picture perfect, and definitely scarred up, but genuinely happy. For the first time since I buried Margaret, I felt whole. You hear folks say family is everything. I buy that. But family isn't strictly about who shares your last name or your DNA. Real family? That's the people who actually see you. The ones in your corner who'll give it to you straight, even when it stings. Christopher lived under my roof for 8 years. But Bernard, Maureen, Pastor Joyce, Rachel, they stepped up when the chips were down. And Claire, she found her way home. If you're staring down betrayal or fear, hear me out. You have every right to defend what belongs to you. Your sanctuary, your self-respect, your peace of mind. Loving someone doesn't mean handing them the keys to the kingdom. Battle for what counts, and do it with integrity. When the dust settles, leave a crack in the door for forgiveness. Not because they've earned it, but because you deserve the release. I'm 73 years old. I've got more cash in the bank than I could ever blow through. But the real wealth? That's Sunday supper with my girl. It's dirt under my fingernails in the garden. It's knowing I didn't fold. That is worth a hell of a lot more than $95 million. It's worth every penny. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Drop a comment. Share your story. Thanks for hearing me out. I'm Thomas Miller, signing off from Cannon Beach, Oregon. Look out for one another. When I check the rearview mirror on this saga, I see a guy who nearly lost the whole farm. Not because he was soft, but because he loved too hard and trusted with his eyes closed. Don't make my mistakes. Don't brush off the red flags. Don't wake up 8 years later to find someone has slowly siphoned off your home, your pride, and your quiet. Take my advice. Draw lines in the sand early. Love isn't a license for people to trample you. As Claire told me, Dad, justice isn't about cruelty. It's about standing your ground when the world expects you to roll over. I didn't wage war for the cash. I did it for the meaning. For Margaret's memory, for the home we built, and for the sake of my own soul. If this saga taught me anything, it's that the sharpest knife is always held by the ones you love. But I also learned that coming back from the brink is possible. Claire found her way home. I finally found my quiet. What started as a father's vengeance evolved into justice, softened into forgiveness, and eventually settled into healing. I truly believe the Almighty doesn't put us through fire to burn us, but to show us exactly what kind of steel we're made of. When Christopher tried to swindle me out of my house, God proved I was tougher than I thought. When Claire returned, he reminded me that showing mercy is the ultimate grace. You don't forgive because they earned it. You do it because you deserve to be free. If you're trapped in a family war full of lies, greed, and backstabbing, hear this. You aren't fighting this alone. Stand your ground with honor. Guard what you've built. And when the smoke finally clears, keep the gate unlocked for the ones who truly want to fix things. Getting even isn't the finish line. Peace is. Thanks for riding shotgun with me to the very end of this journey. I really want to know your take on this. If you were walking in my shoes, how would you have played this hand? Drop a line in the comments and let me know. If this story struck a chord with you, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next chapter. Just a quick note. While this tale draws from the real heartbreak of elder financial abuse, we have dramatized some parts for the sake of the story. If this isn't your cup of tea, no hard feelings, feel free to click away and find something that suits you better. I'm Thomas Miller, signing off from Cannon Beach, Oregon. Take care of each other out there.